Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to A Good 10 Minutes. I'm your host, Alex. This is a Monday morning, March 25th news and headline and market updates for you all. Let's get the party started. Obviously, markets were closed over the weekend, but investors hope this week on Wall Street will be as enjoyable as the last when stocks raced higher after Fed Chair Jerome Powell previewed a series of rate cuts. NASDAQ year to date has been up over 11%. S&P 500 has been up over 10%. Dow has been up over 4%. Bitcoin has been up 58%, although last week was rough for Bitcoin. An interesting stock for you all to look at is actually Wingstop. Their stock has been looking more tangy than blue cheese thanks to growing consumer preference for chicken, and it has surged more than 380% in the last 5 years. So if you invested in Wingstop 5 years ago, you're almost 4x your money. Take a look. Wingstop has been up 41% year to date so far. Pretty interesting, if you ask me. All right, let's get into an interesting story here that's developing. The power grid has a data center problem. This is potentially a big deal as AI data centers are sprouting up across the United States. This staggering growth is causing alarm that the country's power grid doesn't have the electricity capacity to absorb them without breaking. Please recall the other important component to this is Biden's push for electric car, for internal combustion engines to no longer be the preferred mode of transportation for Americans. So we have a real electrical grid issue happening in the United States, and it's an important thing to look into. At a major energy conference in Houston last week, the number one agenda item of all things was artificial intelligence, with leaders including Bill Gates warning that the top constraint to AI development was actually finding sufficient power sources to feed data centers. So how do we get here? Over the past few decades, US demand for electricity has been pretty flat, but the horizontal chart went fully vertical as the excitement around AI set off land grab for data centers, which are massive buildings housing the computing infrastructure that trains large language models like the one behind ChatGPT. Earlier this month, Oracle chairman Larry Ellison boasted that he's building an AI data center that could fit 8 Boeing 747s nose to tail. Wow. The power problem. Airplane hangar-sized data centers training AI systems require exponentially more power than traditional data centers, per Washington Post, causing utilities to dramatically upgrade their demand projections. Oregon's Portland General Electric just doubled its forecast for new electricity demand in the next 5 years. Georgia now predicts 17 times more demand for industrial power than recent estimates. This has created a challenge like we have never seen before, the chairman of Georgia's electricity regulator told the news channels. It's not just data centers that are straining the grid. The US is experiencing a historic explosion of factory investment as a result of Biden administration's manufacturing subsidies gobbing up power supplies. Crypto mining, too, is taxing the US's aging power grid. Big picture is, as tech giants like Amazon and Meta scour the US for cheap and plentiful electricity, many worry it could come at the expense of climate change goals. States concerned with meeting this demand have proposed dozens of new gas-fired power plants to feed data centers' insatiable appetite for electricity. So very, very interesting. We'll see what happens. If you're an investor looking into power and energy, is very, very interesting. A company that I invested in is called NEE. It's an electricity company or a utility company out of Florida that has seen exponential growth. Really, really interesting investment opportunities. All right, let's take a look at headlines from over the last couple of days. Back to Russia, which suffered a very tragic and extreme loss of life. In the last couple of days, Russia has held a day of mourning for the 137 people who were unalived in a terrorist attack on a concert venue Friday. And Russian President Vladimir Putin said authorities had arrested the 4 gunmen suspected of carrying out the assault. Now, for you all who have been following this, the 4 suspects were brought into a court hearing yesterday in really rough shape. One of the victims was allegedly part of his ear was cut off and he was fed his own ear. One came in with a broken jaw, one came in a coma. You could see that the um, interrogations have been extreme, and that these young men who committed this atrocity are going to, experience hell, frankly. Just really reminds us of how lucky we are to live in the United States, and how rights are not equal everywhere in the world. NBC's Chuck Todd blasts his bosses for hiring former RNC, Republican National Committee chair. After stepping down from her role leading the RNC this month, Ronna McDaniel was hired by NBC as a paid contributor, and her past support of lies about election fraud in 2020 is not sitting well with network's journalists. Following an interview with McDaniel on Meet the Press, former host Chuck Todd joined the show to criticize NBC execs for hiring McDaniel and said it put reporters in an uncomfortable position. He told current host Kristen Welker, who conducted the McDaniel interview, that, quote, "I have no idea whether any answer she gave to you was because she didn't want to mess up her contract." So really interesting story is NBC, which is very, very left-leaning, hired a very formally right-leaning Republican National Committee chair. So really interesting there how business is put ahead of principle. Last but certainly not least, huge headline is that Trump's bond deadline is here. New York's Attorney General could begin seizing Donald Trump's assets, huge drama, if he doesn't put up nearly $500 million bond by today. When he lost a civil fraud trial this last month, Trump, remember, was ordered to pay $464 million, which is an unprecedented amount. So we'll see if he's able to come up with this massive amount of money, roughly $500 million in cash. And if not, all hell will break loose. Another interesting development that's happening here that I wanted to quickly mention is that supersonic flight for commercial travelers hasn't existed since 2003, but may be making a return. Please remember, for all of you, older millennials, that Concorde was an airline that had airplanes that flew at supersonic speeds and were able to slice travel times in half by flying faster than the speed of sound. Now there's a new company that's coming out called Boom Supersonic, and it has a prototype airplane called XB-1. It's a jet that has completed a successful test mission over the Mojave Desert, and the prototype will ultimately make way for Overture, which is a full-size plane that would be the first commercial supersonic aircraft since the Concorde, again, stopped its flights in 2003. Boom said it's locked in orders or pre-orders of 130 jets to major airlines, including United and American. So very, very interesting here. Also important to note, just breaking news right now, Boeing's CEO is stepping down at the end of the year. Just breaking news a moment ago. So Boeing obviously being under fire as well. Looks like their CEO is going to step down at the end of the year. Sam Bankman-Fried will be sentenced in Manhattan today. Please remember, this is the FTX co-founder and fallen crypto star. Prosecutors have called for a sentencing of 40 to 50 years for extreme fraud, but his lawyers are suggesting 6.5 years. In all, roughly 1 million victims lost more than $10 billion upon the collapse of FTX. So Thursday will be interesting to see what's actually going to happen. The Supreme Court is going to hear abortion pill cases. The abortion pill is called mifepristone. It's basically an oral medication used to end early pregnancies. So we'll see what the Supreme Court says about that. So we'll take a look and see how that story develops, as abortion has been in the news. And just 4 really quick hitters before we come up on this 10 minutes. The FAA is looking at ways to curb growth at United Airlines, including limiting its ability to add new routes following a series of mishaps. Major League Baseball is investigating the betting scandal surrounding Shohei Ohtani. The Mega Millions jackpot has reached 1.1 billion. So, if you want to invest $1 to get 1.1 billion back potentially, it is the 5th biggest prize in history. And last but not least, a Happy Gilmore sequel could be in the works. That would be really, really exciting for all of us old school comedy fans. That's it, making it right under 10 minutes. Thank you all so much. Let's have a fantastic week, hoping for a bull market. I will talk to you all later. Thank you. Comment, like, and subscribe. I appreciate you all. Peace.